time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is tea time with Miss Liz. That's right. We are here and it is an evening tea. And believe it or not, we are at the end of October. That's right. The last guest for October already. Then we're jumping into November. We are just flying this year. 2022 is just flowing like a good cup of tea. So we're going to do the disclaimer and all that good stuff and a little intro of the incredible guest. Lynn Else is in the studio and she's a tea sipper. So imagine what kind of tea we're going to have tonight. So we're going to do this disclaimer and then we'll get her into the studio and we'll just sit and flow and spill a good old cup of tea. So the disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Times live shows. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forth dialogue and opinions that may not represent my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussion for some where it may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that this show is engaging discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, Miss Liz, myself, I welcome you. Should you decide that this show is not made for you at this time, I respect that and I will see you at a later date at a different show in the future. Now, I'm going to bring in my guest and I'm going to read a little bit of her bio, and then we're going to sit and we're going to spill some tea and we're going to get to know about all these incredible books that she's written and all of that good stuff and all the social media kind of stuff. So we're going to just have a good old fun tea. So I'm going to bring in Lynn Else in the studio and I'm just going to do a little quick intro. Hi, Lynn.
Hello.
It is nice to have you here, and it is nice that we are finally getting to have some tea with Tea Time.
Yeah, we're steeping it real. I've been waiting with that joke. I hope you haven't heard it. Sorry.
I haven't. It's a new one, so it's a good one, right? That's what we need. We need something new to spill and flow. So I'm just going to do a little intro of you, Jalen, and then if you want, you can add whatever I've missed, and I'll just do a little intro, and then we will get in, spill some tea, hear about these incredible books that are in behind you, all the dragons and all that. I got some good questions for you, girl. So, Lynn Else is an award-winning author from Minnesota who self-published 2 historical fiction novels set in ancient Egypt. The Forgotten Aten Last Queen, 2013, which was named an Indie Editor's Choice Book for 2016 by the Historical Novel Society, and The Forgotten Heir of the Heretic, 2016, as well as sci-fi novella Strangely Constructive Souls, 2018. Through Inklings Publishing, she authored an auditorium. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Am I saying it right, Lynn?
Arthurian?
Arthurian? My tongue is there. It's rolling again. Influenced female-driven fantasy trilogy, Descendants of Avalon, which we will be speaking about tonight. Lost in 2018, Lost Daughters of Avalon in 2019, and Destiny of Avalon 2021. And her short stories, The Girl from the Haunted Woods, won 2 second place in the Journey in the Fantastical Anthology contest. And for more on Lynn Else, you can check out all of her full bio on Miss Liz's Tea Time Facebook page, Instagram, and all that good stuff. So, Lynn, let's just get in there and let's just spill some kind of tea. And I love dragons, so you got me, girl.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and I appreciate all your time. So thank you.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. So let's get into the books right away. Let's jump into the books. So you started writing at what age, Jalen?
Well, started writing was way back, like in middle school and high school. I did a lot of just kind of fun writing. I used to love the Christopher Pike books when I was in middle school, and I'd be like, I want to write a scary story. And I loved those assignments in school where we'd write like something, a short story, a little snippet. I always enjoyed that so much. And then in high school, I was a part of a writing club. And so we wrote about different characters that we had each month, and so fun. I think that's kind of how I developed my character drivenness, because it was just all about those characters and what they were doing, and everybody in the writing club had a different character. And then I started writing scripts because, Star Trek, The Next Generation used to take scripts from unsolicited from people. I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I love Star Trek. I watch it all the time. I can do that. Um, I didn't finish a Star Trek script. I finished an X-Files script. Then I went to college, and life progressed. Eventually, after I had kids, I was writing and illustrating some children's books, which they didn't really get some traction until later. I do have a book that's coming out that's a children's book I'm excited about. But eventually, I've always loved history, especially ancient history. And when I went to this King Tut exhibit, I'm trying to think when that was. I mean, I was an adult. It wasn't that long ago. Um, I saw all these images of King Tut and his wife, and I thought they were so, so interesting, especially because nobody knew what happened to her. What happened to her after King Tut dies? Nobody really knows where she's buried, how long she lived after that. I was like, I want to tell this story. And I have so many books on ancient Egypt, let me tell you. So, as my own little self-proclaimed armchair archaeologist and Egyptologist, I decided to dive into some research and decided to write a book about her because I thought she was interesting. Then I still kind of had the writing bug, so a few years later, I published a second book about her older sister and kind of that time when ancient Egypt was just under one god, and it was a lot of turmoil and turbulence, and what it was like being a woman, kind of a girl growing up back then. And eventually, I met up with some people at Inklings Publishing. I had a friend who was published through there, and so she kind of passed me a name to inquire with, and I sent them the first book in my trilogy, the Arthurian-inspired fantasy, and the rest is history. So yes, I then got my trilogy out, and that's kind of where my writing has been.
So then have you been like fascinated with dragons? Because I see dragons like in the back. Like, where
I'm
does
a
that
big,
come in? Because you talked about Egypt, but now I see the
Mhm.
dragons in the back. So where did
I
that come in?
I do have a dragon in book 2 of the trilogy that you'll get to meet. I think dragons are great. I love fantasy novels so much. I love reading them. I love it when they have cool women and cool dragons. And so you get to meet a dragon in book 2 and come to know her a little more in book 3 of the Avalon trilogy. So, yes, I finally felt cool enough to write a dragon. So, finally showed up in a book.
So where does Star Trek come in? Because I've been watching your TikToks and oh my goodness.
I'm kind of a nerd. Um, Star Trek was something the next generation back in, 88, 89. We moved to a new place. I was in elementary school. It was very difficult for me to move because I was leaving all my friends. It was hard. It was a huge culture shock. Like the place I came from, 202 people was the population. I moved down to another town. It was 70,000. And, now that's doubled and whatnot. But back then, that was huge. That was like, what is going on? Like we had visited other places like bigger cities to go shopping and whatnot. But for me, that was like huge. And somehow we started watching Star Trek, and I just felt like they're exploring all these new worlds every single episode. They have some cool female characters, and we have a lot of Star Trek nerds in my family, and I didn't realize I was one until I was in 4th grade. And then my sci-fi bug just took off. So Yeah, I've been a long time fan.
So what got you into tea?
I've been thinking about that. Like I didn't get it really into it until I was an adult. And I think it was my friend took me out for my birthday one year when my kids were a bit younger. Right now my kids are, to give you perspective here, my kids are 18 and 16. So, sorry, 19 and 16. So, it was a long time ago. We went out to have some high tea and, like little cakes and whatnot. And I think that's when I began to notice the difference between bag tea and loose leaf tea, which is my total tea snobbery now. I don't drink bag tea. I only drink the loose leaf, and I love to talk about how much loose leaf is superior. So, yeah, I think it was just a fun time I had, and I'm like, this is amazing. And now my kitchen's overflowing with whole bunches of tea, all types of tea, black tea, white tea, green tea, all sorts of chai. I love chai. So it's just all over my house now.
So is chai your favorite tea?
Well, chai is the easiest stuff to get if I go out with friends. So I don't drink coffee, but pretty much all of my friends do. So at least if we go out somewhere, I have an option. So it's nice, hot or cold. But when I make stuff at home, it's usually more the black tea, white tea, green tea variety.
Yeah, I've seen some of your tea videos, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, where did she get that kind? Like, I thought
All
I had a
over.
lot of tea, and you beat me. Like you beat me.
On my shelves. I know, it's kind of
Yeah, I was
crazy.
like, oh my god, she just opens the door. There's a tea. I was like, oh, what's she got in there?
All sorts of stuff. And now it's kind of accepted that book nerds and tea nerds kind of are, all in sync. So a lot of like bookish items are also tea items. So that's really fun. I like that.
I like that you put book nerds and tea nerds, right? 'Cause you need both of them, right, to enjoy a good book.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll mesh all of that.
Absolutely, right? So then I wanted to get into the Avalon series.
Yeah.
So you started writing them in 2018, right?
Yeah, it definitely it usually takes me maybe about a year to write a book. So I had started it earlier. I had started it there is which is coming up, and I still don't even know if I'm doing it or not. November is National Novel Writing Month. And so that's actually how I finished my first book was through that process was it's called NaNoWriMo, and each day you want to get like 2,000 words written down. So that way by the end of the month, the goal is to have like a whole book written. Now, that's not to say it's a good book. It's just a first draft of a book. So that's kind of how I completed it. And the story had been percolating in my head for a little while, kind of about a wishing well and people beyond the wishing well. Maybe there is another land beyond the wishing well. Where do your wishes go if they have any influence on things? And somehow Arthurian legend kind of got spun into that because I really enjoy folklore and all those sorts of old tales, like I like ancient Egypt and stuff. I also love kind of those folk tales about legends. And I thought, King Arthur has a lot of really cool women around him. Let's explore them a bit and also bring in, kind of some teenagers from now who kind of get thrown into this battle of good and evil in the land of Avalon. So it was just something that all kind of coalesced together and became a story. And I hadn't planned on it being a trilogy at first. I mean, I was open to that. And so when I did sign with the publisher and they're like, hey, we want to make three, I'm like, oh, I got to come up with another story or two. But it worked out in the end. I'm so proud of the other two books as well. Third book is totally like all over the place. I even bring in some ancient Egypt into the third book. So it's exciting.
So you the trilogy, that's three books, right? A collection of three?
Yes. Yep. So it starts with the Descendants of Avalon. That's kind of where our four main characters get introduced to this land of Avalon and the people in it. They have to go rescue one of their friends who's been captured by this evil wizard. And then the second one, we really kind of explore more of the world. That's Lost Daughters of Avalon. And we start exploring the world more. I had to put a library in there because I'm like, I don't have a library in there yet. I need one. Cool libraries are so much fun in books. I think we can all name cool libraries from different fantasy books that we love. So it's like, first of all, got to get a library, and then kind of exploring a little bit more. And then the third book, Destiny of Avalon, just is this like ultimate struggle between now I bring in like Jin, the genies, and a little bit of that, and there's one who's bent on creating the spell which will destroy life as we know it, and they have to stop this person. And so the girls, all the teenagers, go on their own different quests with some of the different people. So this is the first time they're really splitting up, and it's really about searching for that inner power within you. It's about friendship and connections, but it's also about finding your own inner strength and really letting that carry you through and believing in yourself. I mean, I really wanted to write stories about um, a different group of a group of girls. Like if you think about a lot of fantasy books, they're mostly guys with maybe a bookish smart girl on the side. I wanted to have a bunch of different girls. I wanted them to make jokes and make mistakes and be a little silly at times. You know, they didn't have to be the bookish smart one. So that was one of my driving factors is first getting a group of girls who young readers can maybe relate to a little more. There's some more diversity there in terms of personality, and also bringing in some cool women from history as well. So, and then dragons. So
Well, you got it all in one, right? Make a perfect cup of tea.
it's all in there.
So, are you into the new dragon, the Thrones of Dragons? I think it's called.
Oh, no, I don't watch House of Dragons. My son says I should. I don't watch Game of Thrones. Um, they're a little too graphic for me. I would say I'm a bit more in La La Land. I like not so much violence in my stuff. So, no, I don't watch those. Right now I'm actually watching a lot of Disney Plus. So,
So, what did you think of the dragon from the Neverending Story? Because I'm sure you watched that
yeah.
one.
Oh, I watched that one and I thought how cool it would be to ride him because he was so silly. But I think the biggest heartbreak, and I love how people are noticing this now, like our generation is like bringing this back. How Atreyu was trying to get his horse through the mud and it wouldn't go, and that was like the saddest part of a movie, like the most traumatic scene in our childhood. I just think it's funny how it's all coming back. But yeah, I thought that dragon was cool. I thought he was a little strange, like some of his face. Like I can, now I know it's just like the special effects and whatnot, but he was a different looking dragon than I was used to. But I was still like, I want to ride him. I want to be on that dragon's back.
Yeah, he was a cool dragon. That was like one of my favorite movies with my kids as well. I was just like, when I was doing your promotions for the tea time, the Never Ending Story came to me right away. I don't know what
Yeah,
it was. I was just like, oh my god, like yeah, Never Ending Story for because
yeah,
you're
you put it
also
on the stuff. Yeah, I heard it.
yes, I did, and I don't know. Songs are called to me when I'm doing the promotions for each of the tea times, and that one just came to me like right away. Never Ending Story. I could just see you riding this dragon, and I was just like,
Oh my
no,
gosh,
that is who she is. Like,
I
and
was
you're the
so
Never Ending
vibing with that.
Story, right? Because you also do book reviews. So for the listeners and that out there, what is a book reviewer?
So I review books mostly for the Historical Novel Society. So they're really historical based, either fiction, nonfiction, fantasy. People will submit, like either indie authors or professionally published will submit to our group. The reviews are free, but it's basically volunteer time. So if we have time to read a book, we'll definitely select it. So I usually stick with a lot of ancient history or fantasy. I'm really kind of getting into some Viking type stories, dig it into my Viking roots as a Swede. So it's something that, we read these books, and the first part of the review, we kind of summarize what the book's about to really get people to understand quickly, within like 4 sentences, maybe what the book is about, draw you in. And then we leave our review. Did we find it historically accurate? Did we find the characters interesting? Was the plot plausible? I've noticed sometimes like modern expressions pop in I mean, you'd be surprised. Like for instance, I was reading a book that was set in like 1930s, and someone referenced serial killers. And also being a true crime fan and watching a lot of forensic files, I know that the term serial killer wasn't termed till the 70s. Like that wasn't a term at all. People used a
Yeah.
different term back then. So things like that, if I catch that, it just kind of takes me out. And so that's something that maybe I'll comment on. Like, I felt like maybe some of the atmosphere was great, but the way characters spoke, the references they used, kind of took me out of the storyline. So we really do look at things with the historical lens, and because we love historical fiction and
Hmm.
nonfiction, and there's a lot to learn from our history. I think that sometimes people forget that we should be mindful of so we don't repeat a lot of these horrible things that have happened in the past. Again, I
Yeah.
try and keep things a little lighter. I don't read a lot of the kind of World War II tragedy books because I just want something light and happy at the end sometimes. So yeah, that's
So
kind of what I do with
what
that.
gives you like a five? Like if you read a book, what is it about that book that you'll give a five for?
One thing is definitely the prose, how the author writes the story. What are some of the allusions or metaphors? Is it something that I can really feel, that I can really, like, I feel like I can just reach out and touch? Another thing is the world building. Is this a world I'd want to go to? I mean, there's some worlds I don't think I'd last very long in. Um, and some that's like, oh my gosh, I would love to go visit that. Or even little pockets of dangerous worlds that are just this beauty that you just one of the books I recently read is Six Crimson Cranes. And there's just this lovely storytelling. You get this map at the beginning, and so you can kind of track where the character goes to these different lands that are kind of inspired by Asian mythology. And it's a world I'm not familiar with, but I felt very comfortable reading. Like I felt I was very immersed in that storyline, and I loved it. And also characters. I have to somehow really kind of relate to this character. One thing that I just can't get behind is characters who either don't have a learning curve, like they're instantly learning, like, oh, I've always been a warrior in my blood. I can just fight all these bad guys now with the sword. Can't stand that. And also if the characters hold themselves accountable, if they make mistakes, maybe at first they don't own it, but if they eventually learn to own it, I think it's very important that characters learn and grow and take responsibility for themselves. So it's kind of the long answer, what I'm always looking for: character development, the amazing world building, and really how that author speaks her language or his language and brings all of it to life.
Well, and I think it's really important, right? Because you want to be able to almost be in the story when you're
Hmm.
reading a story, right? You don't want to read it and then you're like, oh, where am I going with this? Like, what am I doing here? And it's
Yeah,
almost like you said, like, I was a warrior, I'm going to fight everything. But you're not building up how that warrior got to the fighting part. So
yeah,
it makes a lot of sense. So,
yeah.
for any of the listeners and viewers out there that are listening or will watch the replay later, what message do you have for them as a book reviewer for stories?
I think it's be confident in your voice. If it's something maybe that doesn't speak to me, that doesn't mean it's not going to speak to someone else. Everyone out there has an amazing voice, and it's unique to you. Like your life experiences are so different from mine. Like if we were given the same plot outline, here's your character, here's how they have to go, write the story. We would write completely different stories because I see things differently than you. I express myself in different ways. You can see I use my hands a lot when I talk. And I think that's so fascinating is how many wonderful stories are out there that can only be told by the person writing them. There is no one else on this earth who thinks like you, who talks like you, and who will bring a story to life like you. So know that even if you put it out there and it's beautiful, if it doesn't speak to me, that's okay. It'll speak to someone else. Not everyone is going to love your book. And no, that's just the beauty of the diversity of this world. It's the beauty that makes you different and me different. And be proud of what you've written, because if it's out there, you've written a book, man. That's amazing. So that's what I would say is just Know that not everyone's going to like it, but be proud of what you've put out there because only you can tell that story.
Now I want to get into Lynn. I want to get into the nerdy mom because I thought that was cute when you put that in your bio. I was like, oh my god, yeah, she's my cup of tea. Like, let's get nerdy here.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So, what would you like to learn about my nerd?
So, what is it about a nerdy mom for the listeners out there that want to know what a nerdy mom is?
So, there are moms who sometimes embarrass their kids. And my kids kind of laugh at it. They used to rate me and my brother are huge Star Trek nerds, huge Star Wars nerds. For like conventions, we do cosplay, which is we dress up like certain characters. I have like a Star Trek uniform. So sometimes my son would rate people as 0 to mom, mom being the nerdiest. And then he got to know my brother a little. So now it's 0 to my brother, just like we've kind of gotten my son into Harry Potter and some of the more fantasies, and my daughter's more into Lord of the Rings, but I could not get a single child into Star Trek. And I don't know what it is, but we got some into Star Wars, we got them into Lord of the Rings, Star Trek. Nobody else in this family will touch it except me. I don't get it, but I will still wave that flag loud and proud and be my nerdy self.
And I love that because that shows your authenticity, right? It shows that I am a nerd. This is who I am, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important as a mom, that we have to play around and have fun with our kids, and that's what we're made for. We're here to embarrass our kids. Like, I do it all the time with my kids when I go shopping. They're like, "Mom, what are you doing?" I'm just like, "Oh, have a little fun. Come on, laugh a
I
little."
know. Sometimes I'll do a little dance in the aisles. My kids are running away. I'm like, what's wrong with dancing out in the world? It's great. I think it's important that, kids see you do have a personality and it's okay to be different from other people. I think that's a good way to show them, you're a unique person too. Let everyone see that because you're amazing too. Just like your mom is cool and nerdy, so are you. It's in your blood. Just embrace it.
Because when you have your kids, you're going to be that nerdy mom.
Yep, yep.
So let's get back into the tea, Lynn.
Okay.
You're a tea sipper. So what is a tea sipper?
I just really like trying new things, first of all, but I also like trying different types of tea. So I tried recently, I got like a pu'er cake, which is like a circle. I hadn't had that before, but I got some and I tried it and it's good. It's a little smokier than I usually have, but I just like trying all different things. So I don't just limit myself to the ones I'm necessarily familiar with, like flavored blacks. I like fruitier stuff. I like chocolatey stuff. But I want to try a lot of different stuff. So if I'm driving around and I see a tea store, I'm going to go stop and have some tea because that sounds amazing. And let's try something new because all stores have all different like distributors and different blends that they do. So it's really just me trying a whole bunch of new stuff, really, and just labeling it with tea.
And I love that you said that, Lynn, new stuff, because that's as soon as I see the word new, I'm like, that's where I'm going. It doesn't matter. And then my kids are like, Mom, your allergies. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's just step back one or two. Go read the ingredients and give me a thumbs up if it's good. Then I'll come and
Okay.
I'll check it. Because I have a lot of allergies with food and coconut and stuff, all that good stuff,
Oh.
right? So a lot of tea use coconut and
Mhm.
use the nuts and all that. So I have to be careful with that. But I'll just see a nice pretty box and I'll be like, "Oh, I need it. I got it."
Oh.
And then my kids are like, "Mom, you can't drink it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
I got a box of tea at the Mall of America at a tea store, and I kind of saw this, but I thought maybe inside it would be different, but the outside is all written in Chinese.
Okay.
And it's these two cute little bunnies, and on the inside there's a whole bunch of little tea satchels, but that's still all written in Chinese. So I don't know what these flavors are. Thankfully, my supervisor at work does speak Chinese, so I can be like, "What's this one?" before I put it in my tea. Or I could just play like, roulette, like let's see what this is and see if I can
Right.
taste it. So yeah, that's just, you know, trying something. I thought it looked cute. I thought it looked fun, so I brought it home and I'm lucky enough I don't have any of those types of allergies. I mean, on the other side, I get motion sick super easy. I have amazing friends, and they took me up to do this virtual reality Star Trek thing.
Oh,
It was so cool, but by the end I got extremely motion sick. I was
I
just
can
like I was
imagine.
like, guys, I swear I loved it so much, but I'm sorry. I'm so sick. I need to lay on the ground for a little while. So, we all have our things, but yeah.
That's awesome. So, what would you like to tell the viewers and listeners out there about your previous books that you wrote?
So, again, I'm a big fan of ancient history, so I wrote the ones about ancient Egypt because I really want to focus on women's voices and letting them be heard because you see pictures, but you don't always hear what they have to say because, a lot of history isn't written by women that's preserved anymore. So that's something that really motivated me to write those stories. Now, my science fiction novella, that was fun because it was a plot that came to me in a dream. Never
Oh,
had that before. So our local library was having a Frankenstein contest, kind of a contest because it was like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's anniversary. And so they were putting out a call that said, "Hey, write a short story with some Frankenstein themes in it, monsters and whatnot." And I had a dream about a human zoo on an alien world, which may not sound like it hits the theme right away, but when you kind of bring in that focus of trust and monsters around you and looking different and acting different, I was like, "Hey, this might work." So it had been a while since I'd watched a lot of science fiction. I always say, if you're going to write the genre, read it. And I haven't read a lot of it recently, so I kind of dove back in for a little while, got that story going and submitted it. It didn't take any places, but I still self-published it cuz I was pretty proud that I think this is cool. I may write another one. I have a few different ideas next, kind of with some of those characters off in space somewhere, but yeah, that was crazy. I just woke up. I'm like, I need to write this down right now so I don't forget. Um, so yeah, that was the novella that I wrote. And then I wrote a short story for another contest, which was The Girl from the Haunted Woods. It is very modern as it kind of takes place during the pandemic. So there's people wearing masks. And that story came about because I was in like a Zoom meeting with my publisher, I think, and some other authors. And I was like, we're in an age where we can't see who's behind these masks anymore because
yeah.
we're all covered up. So I was like, let's run with that. So, this young girl meets someone else who comes out of the woods. She doesn't really have any friends. She connects with this person, but they're always wearing masks. So maybe what's behind there? So that's kind of where that idea came from. Just some random comment I made. You never know where story ideas are going to pop up. So that was kind of the rest of my stories. Now I'm kind of sitting here waiting. I'm in that phase right now where I've submitted my book to my publisher. It's my children's book. I'm very excited for it to come out. So it's with them kind of before it actually comes out to the public. So I'm kind of in this limbo phase right now of writing. Like, I kind of know what I want to do, but I also want to see this book come out, and I'm just really excited and anxious. So
So, is this going to be your first children's book?
it will. It will. It'll be the first children's book that I've published, and it's about a little elephant who loves ballet, and she joins her first ballet class. So it's kind of about the love of dance and how dancers come in all different shapes and sizes. So
Well, that's really an empowering message as well, right?
I think it's something that's needed, especially for young girls to hear that even if you don't fit like what media is telling you, if you love it, if you feel this in your soul, do it. Don't
Yeah.
let other people tell you no. So I think it's something that I hope when it comes out, little girls can see themselves in and be like, I want to be like this character. I want to dance because I love it too. And I'm not going to listen to anyone else. I'm going to listen to my heart and feel that music and just let it flow.
I love that. I love that. And we need that, right? We need more messages like that for our girls. And I'm seeing a theme with all of your books and the empowerment of women, the history of women, because there are some really incredible strong women from the history. And it's like you said earlier, Lynn, we need to know our history and get to know the history so we're not repeating the history, right?
It's very important. And some of the stuff that comes out in the media, I'm like, what century are we in? You know?
Right?
I'm like, did we already fight this battle? It was just, growing up when we did, I'm classifying you in my category. I was a child in the 80s, teenager in the 90s. There wasn't a lot of media that portrayed women in a strong light. We were mostly the, damsels in distress, kind of the airheads, not the main characters, certainly not the ones who wielded the swords. And I really wanted that in books. I wanted to have those, and there's just so few and far between. Like, Princess Leia in Return of the Jedi, she's just fighting down there with all the boys. And then I watch another movie and I'm like, why isn't that girl like that? Why is she just sitting in the corner screaming? And it was
Yeah.
funny because we were watching The Princess Bride with my daughter, and it's the part where they're in the woods and Wesley's being attacked by the rodents of unusual sizes, and Princess Buttercup just stands on the corner and cringes. And she's like, why isn't she doing anything? And I'm like, welcome to my world, girl. This is what I grew up with. Just like when I was a child back then, I couldn't comprehend why they couldn't do anything. It just didn't make sense to me because I'm like, girls can be capable of stuff. So
Right?
yeah, that's kind of
We
where,
we can speak up too. We can do a good,
yeah. But she could pick up that sword and stab that ROUS. So sorry if I said that wrong. But um, it's just something that was one of my main motivations for writing is it's characters I wished I had seen when I was growing up, seen more of them.
Yeah. Well, you ain't far off. I'm in the 70s, but
Okay, okay.
in the 80s, I was going to high school and that. Uh,
Okay,
so,
good.
but
I
no,
figured we were
you're not far off. I was a little early 70s baby. So
nice, nice. I'm glad
yeah.
I guessed correctly. Sometimes I assume stuff and I'm like, you know what? I don't mean to assume that with you. I'm sorry.
No, and I think that's what we need to do, right? Is we need to bring back the history and mention this. Why weren't the women able to speak up and do these things? When we were growing up, but it's almost like history's repeating itself, and it's like, whoa, 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 we're going backwards here. Let's go forward.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. And I love how there's so many new voices in storytelling now. There's so many more, you know, Black authors and Native American authors, and just so many other cultural aspects that are coming out that I was not exposed to. And I love it. Like, I
Yeah.
love reading all those cultural stories because it's just so unique and beautiful in its own way. And it's fresh for me. It's like, wow, this is so cool. You don't realize all the, different challenges other people had to go through until you get to a piece of their history too. So I have really loved reading a lot of the new books that have come out. Like I mentioned earlier, some Asian mythology, Japanese mythology, Chinese mythology, stuff like that. I just eat that stuff up. I think it's so great to have this out there. But then at times in society and government, it's like, what's going on? Are we
Yeah.
not
Right.
we not paying attention? What's up? So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to get
That's when
too
we have to put
political,
a
but
magical dragon in there and
yeah,
never ending story, right?
we
Let's
need to
bring
have him sail on down and rescue us. And
yeah.
then we'll go get our swords and we'll come back and be like, yo, this is how it's gonna be. So
Right? Let's fight it off. Like,
yes.
well, that's amazing. I want to get before we're running out of time. We're getting close to. We've got a couple minutes left, but we're running out of time here. And before we run out of time, I want to get to know what your T is, Lynn. So if I give you the word T, what words would you give me for the TEA, starting with those letters?
For T, I think about thoughtfulness. For E, I think else because of my last name, or else, what else? I mean, I've just heard that growing up for so long. A, of course, would stand for awesome because I love the word awesome. So I hope you all have your healthy dose of awesome sauce today.
I love it because it's like it is who you are, Lynn. You're that nerdy mom, right? So you like the
Yes,
awesomeness. Like, come on, kids, let's get awesome here. Let's get
of
all
course
groovy,
I
right?
am. Of
And else
course, we all are.
And Else is nice. It's part of you. It is who you are. It's your name, right?
Yeah.
And thoughtfulness. I can see that. You
I think
really
it says a lot about how people are thoughtful of other people in the world and mindful of things. And yeah, it just popped into my head. So,
right. Well, and that's what it is, right? Our teas are what we serve. So that's why I asked you what your tea was. So and I love finding out what all of my guest teas are. So if you'd like to know more about all of the different kinds of teas out there, just check out Miss Liz's YouTube channel or over 40 podcast stations. We are out there. So you can hear all of these incredible tea times out there on multiple podcast stations as well. And I'm working on getting it out in different ways as well. So Lynn, what would you like to see happen with these books, the Avalon? Would you like to see a movie series from them
oh, well, of
or a
course. I mean,
play for the kids at school or
I'm just waiting for Mr. Spielberg to give me a call. Um,
hello?
but I think the main goal is just having them read and just having them touch someone's heart. Have someone say, I could relate to this, or, I really felt that moment. Just to have it out there and people see something in it. Like that was my goal is I hope that people read it and they feel inspired and they feel braver and they feel like there's something special in them too that they can bring out to the world. So while of course movies are the goal, and of course in the contract I will need to be in the movie somewhere because I do have a theater background. So I'm just saying I got some acting experience. Um, Really the goal is just I want people to enjoy it and I want people to feel something from it. So I hope if you do pick up the book, it inspires you or, encourages you in some way. Or
So
you
where
just like one
can
of the characters or the dragon.
right? Be a dragon. Everybody should be a dragon. I
Be a
think
dragon.
dragons are cool, and I'm like you. I like the softer side of stuff
Hmm.
because I find that the magic, right? The magical part of the dragon. Like I think I watched Braveheart too, was with a dragon.
Brave.
And
Oh,
they
yeah, yeah.
and they
I'm
had
thinking.
dragons, right? And I think that was in the early 90s that movie was made or early late
Yes,
80s.
it's. I think it's a different because I'm thinking when you say Braveheart, I think of the movie my husband used to watch every day when he was growing up in college, the one with Mel Gibson.
Oh, no, not that one. Okay, so maybe it's not Braveheart. I know there's a dragon. There's a bunch
But
of
I know what you're
dragons.
talking about. Yeah. Yeah, but I can't think of the name right now. I'm totally blanking.
Yeah, I'm just seeing dragons all over. Like I'm like dragon, 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 dragon. Now my son's a big dragon collector in that as well, so it's pretty cool. That's why I'm
Oh,
just like,
good.
oh, I love dragons. So Lynn, before we wrap up, we've got a couple minutes. We got a little bit more than 15 minutes left. So, what message would you like to give to the youth out there about writing and book reviews and all that good stuff? Let's give them some tips and some tools that they can take home.
I think it's important to stay positive with book reviews unless a book has really, really upset me and offended me to my core, which doesn't happen often. Just try and keep it positive. Someone's put their heart and soul into it and just be mindful that if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. That's okay. You have a right to not enjoy that book. When it comes to writing, one thing I have to remind myself often is that sometimes I picture things in my head, but I don't always explain it all. So make sure you have like all those movements, all those conversations. Don't just assume people understand where you're going with something. Sometimes I am the worst at telling jokes because I will start laughing before I've told the punchline because it's in my head and I'm already laughing. But I haven't told them yet, so no one else can share that with me. So make sure when you're writing, you don't assume things. Um, Take your readers on that journey with your characters, explore things together with them. I really try and let my characters take the reins of the story. Like I'm not a plotter. I don't have these expansive outlines. I have some writer friends who do, and that's what works for them. For me, I just let my character kind of take the reins and go. And so I learn a lot with them when I'm walking through my worlds and describing things and enjoy what you're writing yourself. You want readers to enjoy it, but are you enjoying it while you're writing it? So that'll definitely come across on the pages. So yeah, I'd say definitely keep it positive, enjoy what you're doing. Be sure, again, don't assume people know where you're going. Take them someplace new and make it be fun.
Awesome. So I want to get into before we wrap up, I want to get into your favorite color. I asked you what your favorite color was, and you gave me purple. So why the color purple for?
I just think it's really pretty, I guess. And of course, I live in Minnesota. So, our football team is the Minnesota Vikings. We have the purple people eaters. I don't know if it
Oh,
was just that's what they used to be in the 70s, right? So, I don't know if that was just a subtle thing growing up, but strangely my husband, who's a huge Packer fan, his favorite color is also purple. So, it's like purple just is a good color. It's a color sometimes of royalty. It was a color back in the day where only wealthy people could afford it because of the dyeing process and everything. The ingredients were so rare. So sometimes wearing purple, I just feel a little more special than other days because I'm like, I'm going to be a queen today. Let's go. So yeah, I just like purple all around.
and I asked you one what word would describe you as a person, and you gave me two words. I actually noticed that today when I went back, and I was like, "Oh, she gave me that word too," and I was like, "Oh." So you gave me two words. Do you remember what those two words were?
Fantastical? It's
Uh, no, I got nerdalistic.
Nerdalicious. There we go. Because everything is good with delicious at the end. I'm just throwing that out there. And no, my memory is so bad. I'm
And then I
sorry.
got optimistical.
Optimistical, yes. Because I was talking about positivity. Yes, I like to look at things with a positive outlook. So, yes, optimistical. I wanted to come up with fun words for you, not like everyday words. I wanted to add a little spice to the ending, if you will. So, adding a little bit of that spicy herbal tea to the end of those words. So yeah, um, nerdalicious because, like I said, everything is better with delicious, and yeah, optimistical. Keep it fun, but keep it positive.
I love that you said different because I love different because that's what Miss Liz does. Is different, right? I love when we express ourselves differently and we add that extra spice and that extra little sugar to it, right? We do that little twist. You know, it's
Yeah,
it's it's you don't do plots, but it's almost like there's a little plot coming into it, right? I'm going to give you this word and I'm going to figure me out a little. And the reason that
yeah,
I asked you those one word to describe yourself is because sometimes we look at ourselves and we don't actually know who we are. But when someone asks us to describe ourselves, then we kind of look within, right? It's almost like a cup of tea when we start looking within. So that's the reason that I asked that question is what describes you, because then it makes you look inwards and you're like, hmm, right? And I love
yeah.
that you gave me two.
I'm glad you let me. And it's interesting too if you think about it with tea, because tea leaves look different in different stages of life, if you will. When they're dry, when they're steeping, when they're wet afterwards. It's kind of funny to see how some may change color, some may bloom and open up, some may curl up a little. I think that's always fun to kind of watch what tea. That's why I film those videos, because I think it's like sometimes when they're just steeping and the leaves are going up and down and the thing, I just think it's so mesmerizing and pretty. And yeah, tea is very interesting.
Well, it's almost like the flow of the run of the leaves, right? As they
Hmm.
go up and they go down and everything. Because I noticed that on your videos on TikTok. Because she is on TikTok, guys. So if you want to
Yep.
follow you can find her, give her a follow on TikTok. And I noticed that when you do those the loose leaf teas and the flow of it and everything, there's almost like a message. You know, you kind of like the picture of the tea giving you a story. And I
Yeah, I
like
like to
how the
just
leaves flow, right?
it feels very calming to me. Like this morning I made some tea and did a video with it because I was very cold. But, and I was watching, I was just like, "Oh, this is so neat how it's just going up and down." And that was let me think. It was a black tea, but it was a different like a mate tea. And then some of them, they just kind of float, like, just kind of in the middle, or some of them settle pretty quickly. So I think that's kind of fun to watch, kind of like how people watch a lava lamp, or they have those sticks they flip over and
Yeah.
I think it's kind of fun. Like there's beauty in the everyday that sometimes we don't always see. And that's why I kind of like making those tea videos. I hope other people like it. I do get likes, but I hope they don't get sick of it. I just think it's something, and it's an everyday beautiful that, you know, stop and take time and notice.
Oh, I love that. I love that message. We all need to stop and take time and notice a lot of stuff. No one notice the good stuff. Stop the bad stuff. We don't need to pay attention to the bad stuff. Pay attention to the good stuff. Because I find that the bad is overtaking the good. So let's get some good to overtake the bad. And let's bring
It
back
can.
some old history stories.
Yes.
So, what is one book that has changed your life?
Oh, when I was in college, I read the book Ishmael, um, by Daniel Quinn. And it really was something that flipped the narrative on how we look at how our history is told and what we assume about society and how society is structured. It's just like my mind just exploded like, oh my gosh, all these new ideas. So Ishmael is one of a very impactful story in my college years that I read, and it helped me look at our history and our storytelling differently. So that's one of the main things I got out of it. It was just, and it's a crazy plot. You think it wouldn't work because it's mostly telling. It's like you don't really get into it. Like there's not a lot of world building. There's not like, you don't always watch. It's just people talking. It's a lot of talk, but it's just so like cerebral. It just dr- that typically doesn't work for me, but that book is one that I have on my shelf. My son read it for one of his classes. I'm like, oh, I have that book. I can give it to you. Yeah, I would highly recommend that one. Ishmael by
So,
Daniel Quinn.
so that was one that changed your life.
I would say it just gave me a new outlook on things that I hadn't thought about before. I liked having all these new thoughts in my head. So,
So before we wrap up, I want to get into time travel. You got
oh,
to. I want to really get digging because for me, T is the past, the present, and the future. And you mentioned time travel in your notes that when we communicated back and forth. So I was just like, I want to know how she feels about time travel.
okay, so I'm pretty particular about time travel. Like, so I watched a lot of Quantum Leap. I kind of believe in that theory that if you go back in time and shoot your grandfather, then you would never have been born to go back in time and shoot your grandfather. So it's one of those like, I don't like people going back in time and necessarily changing things. So let's put it this way. The more recent Avengers movie where they went back in time to get the Infinity Stones, didn't like that at all. That was terrible. That was terrible. I'm very like, if you're going to go back in time and you're going to show that things have changed, make it so it feels like this change is something we've always known, but we didn't realize it was different. Make it like there was a Quantum Leap episode that stuck out in my mind where he went back in time. He was a bodyguard for JFK. And at the end, he's upset. He's like, JFK still died. But then Al says, but you don't remember. In the original history, his wife died too. And I was like,
Oh,
oh, chills. you know,
I did
so
not know that.
something like that is what I think is really good. So time travel, you have to be careful with, I feel like. I don't, just make sure if you do it, you respect the past that you're going back into. Don't just go back there and be like, "Yo, how's it going, homies?" Like that's not going to fly. So, just respect the history and make it so we go along with that change and we don't really notice what's changing until it's like that big reveal at the end. So, yeah, I'm pretty particular about time travel.
Yeah, I
Now,
wanted to know how you felt about that because for me, the Back to the Future series kind of
oh
really
yeah.
threw me off because they always went back and changed things,
Yeah, so
to
how
change
could you
it
go
to make it
back?
better, and then other things happen and other things, and I'm just like, leave it alone, like just leave it alone.
How can you get back to that original history because you've changed it so it's not the original history anymore? Yes, I understand where you're coming from with that. That makes sense. I mean, I gave it a pass in the 80s because I was a bit younger and I thought it was fun. But when you look at it now, it's like he talks about that skewed timeline that they
Yeah.
can't go back to, and yet they keep going back to it. You know,
Right?
they change things. It's different. You can't go back. So
Well,
yeah,
as a kid, right, when we watch a movie, we're like, oh, that's so cool. And then when we get older, we watch it again and we're like, why did you do that?
yeah. Wait, that doesn't work. What?
Why? But as a child, we're like, oh, that's so cool. The car's going back in the past, in the future, in the present. It was cool, right?
It
And
was.
then
It
I
was.
watched it when I got older and I was like, well, why did they do that for?
You ruined my childhood now. Now that I know it doesn't work. Agreed.
Right? So, any final words you have, Lynn, for the viewers and listeners out there? And where can they grab all of your books and where can they find you?
So, as you mentioned, I'm on a few social medias. I enjoy making TikTok videos because I think they're fun. So, most places you can find me, Lynn Else author. Some places like Facebook, I'm Tea Sippin' Nerdy Mom, as well as my website is teasippingnerdymom.com. I just thought that was a fun rhyme. My books they can be found on Amazon, but also from my publisher's website, inklingspublishing.com. And as the holidays are coming up, they do have bundle sales. So they may sell my trilogy all in a set and give you a little discount. So just be checking for that. So yeah, you can get it at inklingspublishing.com or Amazon, Barnes and Noble, things like that. You can also get them from major retailers. And yeah, that's where you find me. I'm all over the place. If you'd like to follow, like you said, you're watching me on Instagram. I try and mix it up, Instagram and Twitter. I try to post different things so you don't always get the same thing from all of my sites. So Twitter, I do a lot of I post a lot of my book reviews from Goodreads and I don't like that word, retweet stuff from my friends. I'm not good at saying that
Try
word.
and say that 5 times there.
Retweet. No, I sound like Tweety Bird.
Tweet, tweet, tweet. Do you want to, before we wrap up, we got less than 2 minutes here. Do you want to give a little bit on this site here that I found?
Oh yeah. So that is where I do the reviews. That's where all the reviews are posted. I'm a member of the society. You can look me up there as well. But there's just so many great interviews. There's so many great books you can find. You can search by genre. You can search by authors. I think there's a lot of stuff to discover. I'll be reading through it and I'll find a book and I'll be like, oh, I got to highlight that. I got to check that out. A lot of our reviewers are very knowledgeable about history, so they really are good at analyzing and reviewing these books. And I find a lot of really cool books I need to go pick up. It's fun to explore. And if you love reading history, that's a great place to find a bunch of books. We have editor's choice books. One of my books got that. It was an indie book, so it was in the indie section. But editor's choice books are ones that we really lift up and are like, this is a great example of writing and bringing history alive. Definitely give this one, if you're thinking of this genre, this is a great example. So that's a fun place to go if you love reading and you love history.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I want to thank you so much, Jalen, for joining me in the studio and sharing about your books, about time travel, about dragons and nerdy mom and tea, because that's exactly what we did. We had it all tonight on the table. We had a different type of tea. And we are done for October. So that's right. We are going in November. I can't believe that we're already going in November. But I will be back November 3rd with Ness Rhines from Germany. And she'll be speaking about dope and damage. That's right. She has a podcast and we'll be talking about that. And she's also blind. So we will be talking about blindness a little bit as well. So we have some really incredible things. So be sure to tune in for that. But that will be a morning tea. So you'll have to get up early, grab your tea, grab your croissant or your crumpet, and come and join us for a cup of tea. And again, Lynn, thank you so much for joining me tonight on Tea Time. And thank you to all the listeners and viewers out there. Please let me know, give some feedback, what you think. 2023 is coming, and there is a lot of changes coming for Tea Time with Miss Liz for the new year. So be sure to check that out. And I will see you again in December if you're available, Lynn, for the reunion show. That's right. There's a
Ooh,
reunion show, December 22nd. The
all
date is
right.
out
Thank
there.
you.
So we will be seeing everyone December 22nd. We'll see who comes back and surprises us with some surprises. So until
Awesome. Thank
then,
you so much. Thank you for having me, and everyone, thank you for listening and being here and being present, and I appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I will see everybody November 3rd, 10 a.m. for a new cup of tea. And we will make a difference one cup of tea at a time.